All right, welcome to another TCB Live. And today we have Brad Leavitt on with us. Brad, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
Brad is president and founder of A Finer Touch Construction, which is a Scottsdale based luxury residential and commercial builder. AFT Construction, as known throughout the industry, is an award winning construction firm that has been nationally published in magazines such as Fine Home Building, Lux Interiors and Design, and Professional Builder. Brad's podcast, the AFT Construction podcast, which I was lucky enough to be on, I think episode 48, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
is focused on marketing, social media, entrepreneurship, organization, building science, and construction. So we obviously have a lot that we can touch on here, Brad. So we've turned the tables a little bit too, from me being on the other side of this. So this is exciting. Now I get to know a little bit more about you, and let's just start at the beginning. I'm curious to know. I always like to get to know our who we're talking to, right? So what was it like growing up? What was it like for 7-year-old Brad? Where were you in the world, and what were your interests at that point
That's a good
brought you to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny. So I grew up in San Diego, oldest of 6 kids, come from a big family. Pretty adventurous boy, a lot of energy, like I think most boys do. Back at that time, they didn't classify anyone as ADHD or ADD or anything, but I just always out there playing with friends outside. I was fortunate to grow up in that time. And my father was an electrician actually, and my father's the youngest of 6 boys. So it's kind of funny how that's taken place, because my dad's the youngest of 6. He had 6 kids, and now I have 6 kids. But so all of them were electricians. My grandfather was in the military, he's in the Navy. When he finished his military service in Los Angeles, they moved to San Diego. He started an electrical firm. His boys worked there, and they all took different ventures. My dad went he worked for the union there in California, and worked on, industrial stuff and, heavy commercial, and some of the hospitals, the Sony plant, the zoo, airport, some of those. So I didn't work for him because I wasn't a union contractor, but through high school, my uncles that had the company my grandfather started, I worked for them as an electrician, through high school. So I was able to kind of get a taste of construction. We worked in these amazing, nice homes, high-end luxury homes in Rancho Santa Fe and Coronado and La Jolla, these nice areas of San Diego on the beach. And it's funny because I really didn't like it. I mean, I did it, but I didn't think I really had a passion for it. But then as I got older and I started actually to learn the trade, I just loved it. I realized, I like construction.
What was
And
it about it that got all of a sudden changed?
well, when you're in high school, the thing is like, it's just, you have school, you're kind of trying to figure out what to do with your life. You have friends you want to hang out with. So you don't want to be at work. In the summer, my friends are surfing or they're out hanging out, and I'm having to get up at 5 a.m. to go to the shop and then load up and go work all day. Right. And so it's that, it's not so much the work ethic. It's just understanding, like, put on the tool bags and understanding, I didn't know what I was doing really. I was kind of the grunt. I was the youngest of the cousins. So I was the one going in the attic and under the house, which I wasn't fond of, especially in some of these old 100-year-old homes in Coronado. Like, it's not, there tend to be mice. Look, you're with your flashlight, you see those beady eyes, you hear them running around. And, so it's just one of those things. But then as you start to understand the craft, and I understood electrical, then I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, I get this. And I could see, here we are at a project, and I was able to see projects now from, original plans and design, and you're at rough mechanicals, and then you're getting into finishes, and to see the home transform. Then I'm like, I actually like this.
Yeah. So what you kind of breezed over there too is that you also have 6 kids. You come from 6 kids. Like, that alone is full-time job, if not more than that.
Is full time.
Yeah. So is it just something that I think you mentioned before we hit record too, that your wife comes from a big family as well? So it's just something that you're used to, and it kind of came naturally to you, kind of like,
yeah. I mean, I guess that's
construction.
life, right? I grew up where, all 6, well, I had one uncle in North Carolina, but my mom had 4 siblings. My dad had 5 siblings. pretty much all of them lived in San Diego. So as a kid, I grew up with all my cousins, right? And, over 30 cousins on either side of the family. So it was just something you're accustomed to. Like you get together on family reunions and holidays, and it was just a lot of fun. And so fast forward that, we wanted those memories for our kids too. And, you know, it, the one thing that is tough, like it is a lot to manage, like a lot of personality. And I think today it's a little bit more difficult than when I was a kid, just with social media and phones and technology. And now we're dealing with COVID stuff with school and education, which makes it challenging for our kids. Um, and cost of living, of course, is a lot more inflation. I mean, these are just real things we deal with. But it's fun. The siblings really they learn to get along. They learn communication skills. They learn things. And but there's sometimes my wife and I look at each other and be a lot easier if we didn't have kids sometimes with the complexity of our jobs. But
Yeah, what I bet you though, having those kids, because now you've been in business about 7 years,
mhm.
correct? So, having to basically manage the business of the household and all those different dynamics, I'm sure that's made you a better business owner, right? Because you've kind of learned the hard way with people who basically don't understand you at first.
Yeah. It seems that they don't listen to me either at work or at home sometimes, right? So, no, and I say that lightly. I mean, the reality is, yeah, it is. There's definitely, um, attributes or things you learn, and you're a father, Casey. You get it. Like when you're teaching your kid or your kids, like there's some patience you have to learn, and there's um, communication you have to learn. To because every one of them's different and they communicate differently. It's no different than my team at work. My staff, my team, my work family, if you will, like they all have different traits. They have different capabilities. There's things that I can communicate one way with one of them that's not going to work with the other one. And so there is a balance there, and it's very similar at home to at work. It's no different.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And, one of the things that you're really good at is your company culture, right? You've put a lot of time into creating that culture. And I'm assuming that's something that you've done within your household too. So well, first, how did you create that culture? What is that culture? And how do you make sure that that culture is withheld and upheld? Like, especially as I'm sure you're busy and you're growing and things are happening. How do you make sure that that culture is protected?
Well, that's a great question, Casey. And that's something I seem to spend a lot more time, especially in the last few years, because I've learned, especially in my interactions with other business owners and CEOs, like there's no substitution for company culture. I think any company, if you have good culture and good people, you can do anything and you'll be successful throughout anything that comes along your way. And what I found is there's a few different ways to do that. We try to find opportunities where we're collaborating together, right? Because the more that we're together as a team, the more that we understand some of the challenges everyone's dealing with, whether it be personal challenges, whether it be work challenges, or job challenges, or client challenges. We're all having them, and the more we're together and breaking that down, it helps. Doing autopsies, we use that word, but doing analysis after each project, the things that went good, the things that went bad, how can we fix that? We have team meetings every couple of weeks where we bring the team together and we do team lunches with everybody. And I like to golf, and so we'll do activities where we go out golfing as a company with the team. We have activities where we go to Top Golf. We have activities where we go-kart racing, with the guys and gals. Sometimes with the gals, they don't like golf, so we'll send them to the spa for the day, all the gals in the office. And so we're trying to do things where they can take time on a work day, disengage from some of the stresses that are out there, and build that unity. Because when you have that friendship, that culture, and people respect each other, case in point, we have right now a project coming to the finish line. It's been a tough project. There's been a lot of things working against us on this project. And yet here we are today. I was just there this morning before you and I are sitting down, and 4 of my team members are there. They all have jobs. They all have things they're working on, and they dropped everything to go help one of our superintendents. And the camaraderie, I brought them lunch. We're sitting there with our client, and here you have 4 of our project managers and superintendents out there, all divvying up the house. Like, here's how we're going to knock it out and finish this punch list. And it's that camaraderie, and it's a friendship. Like, it's a true friendship. And I would say too, we're on group text. So even after hours and weekends, we're sending each other funny memes or, different videos. And so that's really important, because when that friendship extends past the office, like it just creates a culture where people like to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so I guess how do you protect that at this point? Like if you're hiring somebody, is that something that you're looking into? Like we all know that you have, the saying is, one rotten apple ruin the whole bag, right? Or
Yeah.
like that saying, but
Well, it's funny you bring this up, Casey, because like right before you came on my podcast, like I had two guests on mine, and one is the CEO of Traeger, like Traeger grills, barbecue or smokers, and then the other one works for Stance Socks, and they're both in like kind of corporate mentality, and they've worked in corporate and startups and venture capitalists. And I talked to them explicitly about this because we share a similar mindset. That what I've found is that if you have a bad apple, like you have to let them go. Like, and I know that's a hard conversation to have because sometimes they're good people, they're good, but they just don't fit the dynamic of the company. And the biggest mistakes I made in my career is having the wrong people there, because it creates it sours the culture. And if you're not protecting your culture, then you start losing out on everything else. Because if one person either isn't towing the company line or kind of going off and doing their own thing, the other employees see that and they'll follow that pattern. And then you quickly lose control. And every time you hire someone, each time down the line, you're going to lose a little bit of your mindset as the owner. So I have my mindset of how I want things run and communicated, and every time I hire someone, we're going to take a step away just a little bit. But the way to bring that back into your question, Casey, is what I found when I'm hiring, especially lately, like experience is super important. I mean, I can't bring someone in that's super green, but experience is not everything. When we're interviewing, it's culture. I want them interviewing with my controller, interviewing with my project coordinator, interviewing with my project manager, and then myself. And they have to pass this checklist to multiple people to understand, the personality. Because if the personality fits, everything will work, and you can train them and not just kick them off the cliff or off the end of the pier and say swim, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. We have a hiring process because I'm like you, like we didn't have a process or culture at the beginning, right? And we had a lot of people that were, and there's like internal fights, and you're dealing with like internal drama, and like when you're already dealing with all this external stuff that's inevitably going to happen when you own a business, whether it's construction or something else, to also have to add on the internal stuff, it just doesn't make sense,
I
right?
know. And it's good you said it that way, because I mean, if you can create almost like a internal force field, right? If you have an internal force field there with your team and there's collaboration and you're protecting that, all these external things that are coming, which it happens, it's construction. Like it's a hard business. We have issues every day, cost increases, labor shortage, unreasonable clients, whatever they may be, communication breakdowns. But if we're tight as a team, these things come and we deflect them off and we work through them together, right? But if we have everyone inside kind of, discombobulated, if you will, and then those come in, then it really creates havoc on a company. And so that's why you really have to seek that company culture and protect it in every way.
Yeah, I love that. We have a lot of people, listeners, viewers who are like younger guys looking to start companies or newer in business that are learning stuff. So this is great to hear because it's hopefully, you kind of learn from our pains, but if not, you'll learn the hard way. But that's the biggest thing that I say too. It's psychology, but that culture is such a huge part of everything. And the next thing I want to go into is something that you're really good at, and you've obviously figured out, is systems and processes, right? That's something that all these things are so easy to say, but not easy to implement, especially when
Mhm.
you're like a new company starting out, because you just have to, like I started out, I'm still swinging the hammer. I just hired my friend, right? I need help, right? Can you help me do this demo? And
Yeah.
that's how we started. So like, what are some systems and processes that you've put into place? Sounds like you have a hiring process, but what else have you done? And where would you recommend maybe people start?
Well, I love the asset. It's funny because a lot of people always ask, they're, Brad, you know, if you could start today, what would you do different? And I think the easy answer for a lot of companies is, marketing, or, understand what you're good at, your wheelhouse, if you will, but more than anything, if I could go back, is I would create systems in place and understand the value of company culture. I feel that like held us back from our growth for the first 4 years. And it's really been in the last couple of years that I've understood the power of systems and culture that's allowed us to like completely take off. And so going back to that question, Casey, I mean, when you think about company culture, it's the systems too, not just the personality, not just the fun, leisurely stuff, and not the camaraderie, but where there's an opportunity for like each employee to understand their scope of work, their responsibilities. You know, if they understand that, you can empower them to be successful. And what I mean by that is we've spent a lot of time, my controller and I, especially in the last year, to understand, okay, when a project starts, what's the protocol? You know, the first time we get the phone call and they're calling myself, I do our business development, and I'm working with this client on their either commercial project or custom home. How does it get to completion? And so we have a full process laid out and it's written out, right? Of all the steps that go through business development and pre-construction, and then setting up a new template, and then estimating, and then coordination, and then the field execution, right? And everyone understands their wheelhouse. And I'll share a couple things for the listeners. You know, one thing we've done is I've been very adamant with our design team and with, I don't do any architecture in house and I don't do design in house. We're strictly a general contractor, right? But with the clients, when they call me, I set the expectation. If you're hiring AFT, if you're hiring our firm, you're going to have an architect and designer and the builder. And we're going to be a team from the very beginning, because that's going to allow us now to vet the project. We're going to understand your budget. And now that we know your budget and we have the team, we can actually make sure that what you're designing and your appetite is going to fit the budget. And, you know, I can help my architect to scale back. I can help my designer scale back, so we're within budget. That way, when the project comes to bid, we've already vetted it. Like, we know it's going to be close to our original budget. And then when that's submitted for permit, the plans, you know, it's at the city for 10 weeks here in Phoenix. We have protocol. My estimating team and my coordinator, they're going to write the entire scope of the project for 2 weeks, and then they send it out for bid. And that took time. Before we'd get the plans, we shoot them out for bid. Who knows what comes back? But now that we spend 2 weeks analyzing the project and we understand every footing detail, you know, every wall thickness, every wall type, you know, all the lighting, I mean, everything that goes into it, when we send that out for bid, there's a template for the subs. They can bid effectively, they can bid on point, and we don't miss stuff. And so this has accelerated us. And it's these simple things that they understand their workload and their window and the handoff. That baton gets passed off, you know, 5 or 6 times throughout a project, and everyone knows when they hold the baton.
Yeah, that's so great to hear, because that's the biggest thing is like you can. I just had this conversation, I think, with I mentioned to 3 different people, like we're just slammed right now. And I just said, it's an integrated design process, right? We want to be involved from the beginning. You do need an architect. We're the same as you, right? We're not going to do design and architecture in house, but we have people that will recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And we also need an energy advisor. That's the other person that we like to bring
Which
into
is
our
huge,
projects. And um, I actually sent an email to somebody this morning saying, like, if you want me to bid on something and you're price shopping, I'm not interested
yeah.
because I know I'm not going to be the cheapest, and not because we're charging more necessarily. It's because I'm going to try and include everything, and it's probably going to be more expensive because maybe something got missed on the other one, or maybe we're not even comparing apples to apples, right? Depending on the level of the plans that we're at. So I said, I'm only interested in being a part of the project if you want to work with us, because we're an open book in the way that we operate. And once again, that's something when you're starting out, you kind of have to take the jobs you can get, and then you can build
Yep.
up to that. So it's taken some time to get to that point and to be able to say no to projects if we're not interested. But it's also important to say no when you're not feeling good about a project. So what are your thoughts on that? Actually, like,
I
have you
I
turned
love that,
down
Casey.
projects?
Um, I think that's great advice for anyone listening. I mean, if you're not there as a company, we understand we had to start somewhere. I started somewhere, so did you, Casey, as a company. But the reality is, at some point, you have to get to that level where you understand the power of no, because no will allow you to grow as a company. And you have to, you know, the more you can network with other people, so you're not making the mistakes yourself and figuring out these red flags yourself. But even to your point, if I have people off the street that cold call me, hey, Brad, we did our design, we're sending out to 3 bidders. Okay, if you're just looking for a price, $20,000. If you want me to bid your house, it's 20 grand. And here's why. I'm not just like giving you a budget. Like, I'm going to spend my due diligence and I'm going to go through, and there's minimums we have, same as you, Casey. There's energy efficiency minimums. There's structural details we'll do that we're not going to cut corners, you know, waterproofing, things like that, and flashing details. And so I have to communicate that for them to understand. But the reality is, if you have someone just shopping you for price, they're only considered about price. And it's the issue is most builders, it's their interpretation of the design and plans. And it's never apples for apples. You and I could bid stuff and we're not going to be apples for apples because we just have a different method. And so it's important to educate our clientele and turn them down and help educate them on the value that we're the same. We're open book, we're transparent. I'm not trying to get rich off one job. We're here for long term. So
Mhm.
I have 6 kids I got to raise, right? We got a long ways to go. So it's like I have to let my clients know the value of bringing the builder on early, setting that budget, setting that tone, and then we're involved and we'll help this home come within budget and still maximize their investment and the value of every dollar they're spending and make this a successful project. And the reality is, Casey, I mean, here's the bottom line. When you talk about efficiency and culture, like if you're not setting your team up to succeed, if they don't have an opportunity to be successful, they're gonna get discouraged and they're gonna get frustrated. And that, goes all the way down. And so by being adamant on the front end and setting these boundaries with the clients and with the team, when we start a project, everything's decided. We still have projects that have 40 change orders, but that's okay. Clients are going to change stuff, but the bulk of things are decided. So that allows a home now that maybe would take 16 months, you can do it in 14. And I'm 100% confident by getting that team and getting the information up front, you can shave 2 months off, and that's going to keep our team, motivated and hungry to, from beginning to end.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, finishing something on time or ahead of schedule is always good for clients, right? That's what
Yeah.
you always want to end on a good note, wherever
The longer it
possible.
goes, the more annoyed they get with you. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So one word you mentioned there too is efficiency. Now, when you're talking efficiencies, though, in that case, you weren't talking about energy efficiency, right? You're talking about efficiencies within the business.
correct. So and this goes back, one of the things, and I did a YouTube video on this. And so anyone from a commercial, if you've worked in heavy commercial or, vertical construction, such as a hotel, right? A multi-story hotel, they, when you're sequencing the schedule, they do what's called a pool plan meeting, PULL. And this is something we've implemented on our side. And this comes down to the efficiency. We do a lot of hillside work in Scottsdale. And so a lot of our projects are up on the hill, up on the mountain. So you're spending 6 months, 8 months, 10 months just to get the hillside construction done. Your retaining walls, get the hard dig, the grading just before you build the house. I mean, we could be in a project 10 months before we can start on slab, right?
How big
And
are
the
these
vertical.
houses?
So they vary. They're
Sorry to throw you off topic, but
no, you're good. So our homes are all over. We have homes in that 3 to 6,000 square feet livable. But we have homes that are 20, 30, 35,000 square feet. So we have a couple big, we have 3 that are over that 20,000 square foot, which are really big projects.
wow.
Um, yeah, here in Scottsdale. So when you're doing a hillside, it's very complex because, there's a lot of lost time. You have to, you have to send someone up. They have to, in Scottsdale, we have state protected trees and cactus and saguaro, right? So they have to come in, they have to tag everything, they relocate it, then we grub, and then you start your first tier retaining walls. And when you're doing a retaining wall, everyone knows you have to dig the footing, make sure the compaction and the water level's right, the moisture content, then you get inspected, then you do the rebar, you get inspected, you pour the footing, you come back, you do your first tier retaining wall. There's all these steps, right? And there's inspections, and it just takes forever. So what we figured out, okay, let's implement that. If we're to build a hotel, they sequence, they bring in all the trades, they bring in everyone, and they're accountable to each other. So before we break ground on a project, we do what's called a pool plan meeting from groundbreaking to slab. And we bring in every trade. We bring in the waterproofer, we bring in the grader, the surveyor, the pool company, because most of the time we put in the pool first because there's no access because it's up on the hill, the concrete company. So everyone's involved. And we sit there, okay, Casey, how long is it going to take you to dig, that first tier of retaining walls? Okay. And then we go to the next person, the mason, how's long going to take you to get that first lift and second lift and then waterproofing? So everyone's accountable. They meet each other. They have each other's cell phones. And what we found is that on a standard 6 month, to slab, we can get that done in 4.5. So that efficiency by understanding at all the elements involved, understanding the process. And we also do team meetings every month where we sit down, and after every project we have a master schedule. So we have a master schedule for a hillside, a master schedule for a remodel, and we continuously update that. And that builds a camaraderie, but it also gives us a template that we can use. And so by having that, it creates that efficiency where now these homes we're finishing 2-3 months faster. And it's because we're just cutting out that dead time and making everyone accountable. And it creates that culture too with the subs, because now all of our subs, they want to be profitable. Like the feedback we get is amazing. Every time they come into our conference room and we sit down and we have our calendar written on the glass walls of our conference room, they all say, we've never done this. Like we've never been in an environment to do this. We feel that we can be more productive, we can be more profitable, which now they're engaged, they want to show up, they want to hit their schedule because they know A, B, and C is dependent on them. And so it just creates this cohesion between everyone that has really helped our team and process.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's actually something that we haven't implemented here. Like we have the site meetings, but it hasn't been, especially COVID changed a little bit, but we have been getting people more involved from the get-go, and we're making sure that we have more regular meetings with homeowners. But getting subs to site is sometimes a different story, right? So,
and it's funny because people ask, they're like, Brad, well, how do you get the subs to show up? Because they're busy, they can't. And I'm like, you know what? If they understand the value, if you teach them the value, they'll show up because they understand they may take 3 hours for this pool plan meeting, but then they see their bottom line and how they know when they're showing up that we're ready for them and they can knock it out with their crews. And it's really, and we do 3 phases. We do the pool plan to slab, then pool plan to drywall, and then pool plan to completion. So we have 3 different meetings on every project where everyone that's involved in that phase will come in, meet each other, and understand the schedule.
that's a really good idea. I'm going to be sending this recording to the team member. Team
Yeah,
member.
I'm telling you, it's valuable.
Yeah.
Casey.
My
And
brother,
I can't take credit. So one of my hires, he was actually a colleague of mine, an alumni of mine. He worked for a large commercial firm for 10 years, and he just joined our firm in January. And so this is something we started this year, 2020, in January. And he brought this in and trained myself, trained our team. His name's Spencer, and it's really changed our business. And these are the type of things when we talk about systems and culture that will accelerate you as a company. And that efficiency is key. The faster we build a home, the more profitable we are. It's just reality.
yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, right? A lot of people reach out to us and they say, well, we want to make sure it's done on budget and on time. And obviously we want the same thing too. And I say like, look, we have the same target. There's no benefit to us dragging this project out any longer than it needs to be, or even making sure that, or even having to go over budget. That doesn't benefit us. We want to get it done as quickly as possible and move on to the next project. It's just,
exactly.
there's no
Because
money.
I mean, the overhead drags. I mean, it's like they get frustrated, and for you, if you're on site and your team's on site, you're paying them health insurance, employee tax. I mean, it's just reality. So the quicker we are, the better it is.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what about the other side of efficiency in terms of the buildings? Is there much going on there in Arizona, or is it lagging behind a little bit? It's a different climate than where we live.
It is. We talked about this a little bit. We're lagging behind, although I will say we're starting to see a bigger movement, for net zero. There has not been a lot for passive homes in Arizona, but we are fortunate. We've done a lot of energy efficient homes, with ICF construction, with SIPs, dedicated advanced framing and mechanical design, getting into that. But what I'll say is that we are doing a net zero home that we'll break ground on in October. And we're really excited about that. It's the home of the year for professional builder for 2021. The Desert Comfort Experience is the name of it. And our client is all in. So the house is going to be ICF and SIPs. And, the way we're designing the foundation, with foam and then, 2 layers of foam on top of the slab and plywood. I mean, that's not something that's very common in Arizona. In other markets, it may be more common. But we're starting to see people that have a desire to do a net zero home. I mean, solar power has always been big here, a lot of sunlight. So solar's been big, but we're finally seeing people gravitate and understand a little bit more about net zero and passive homes.
Well, that's great to hear, right? That's obviously the way future's going. Technology is helping that with that too, right? So better products.
And people such as yourself and Matt Reisinger that are out there doing these videos and stuff and educating the public, people see it and they want it. And And so it is working. We're slow moving in construction. We just always been.
You got to reinvent the whole wheel for everyone, right? There's trades that have been doing it one way for so long, they don't like to
And they don't
change
want to
things
change.
up.
Yeah.
All right. So one last topic I want to get into, because I know you put a lot of time, is kind of the marketing, the branding, social media side of things. Uh, what are you doing, and why do you think this is valuable for businesses right now?
Well, marketing, like the key of marketing, and it's funny, I've really spent a lot of time in marketing the last 5 years, especially. It's almost like I wish in college I would have taken some marketing classes, but the thing I've learned, there's a term that I live by called silent salesman. And what that is, it's people that sell your brand that aren't on your payroll, right? So marketing in essence is an ability, right now, if I have a Travis Matthews shirt on or Nike shoes, we're buying product of a brand. Maybe our wives may want a Louis Vuitton purse or something, right? You're buying a brand, and it's how it makes you feel, like it's the quality or the name, right? There's a feeling there. And so we're supporting these brands, we're salesmen for these companies without really understanding it. And so the key in marketing is saying, okay, if Conscious Builder Casey or Brad AFT, how do you create a global name? How do you expand your name, where now it's not, profitability is one part. I mean, but that aside, the reality is, if you have a name where now you can dictate the clients you're working with, the budgets that they have, the scope of work, this will enable you complete control of your company. And social media is just such a good way to do that, because marketing in the past, you could spend a lot of money on print work, print media. Google came out and you could spend a lot in SEO, for the Google rankings, search engine optimization. But then social media, whether it be LinkedIn or Instagram or Pinterest or House, these are platforms where organically you can grow really quickly and build a network of silent salesmen that are selling your brand and telling their friends, Casey, if you're moving to Scottsdale, make sure you call Brad at AFT. Like, I've been following them for a year. I like their culture. I like their people. I like what they're doing. You need to talk to them. And there's value there, because that phone call now you have the opportunity where these people know you. When they're calling me, they feel like they know me, they feel like they know our company. And so I don't have to sell them. It's more just, what's your budget? What project do you want to do? Is it a match? And if so, let's hit the ground running.
Right. Yeah, it's so true, right? Because that's where we finding now a lot of the videos and stuff that we put out there is that is the sales. That's the first impression, right? Whatever's out there to be found is already, people are doing their due diligence. They're going to do their research before they pick up the phone or send the email or whatever it may be. So it does make it a lot easier. It takes time, once again, to do these things and get it out there, but it's the long game, in my opinion.
But yeah,
So.
and what you're doing, Casey, I mean, you're a thought leader in the industry, right? You're spending time, you're educating the public, and that's benefiting you as well, because people see that. They know if you're on social media, if Casey's on social media and you're on all these platforms, you're not going to run and hide. There's some integrity behind there, because you're a public figure. You're not going to sit here and take someone's investment and do something sketchy, because your brand matters to you. And people trust that, especially in construction where there is a lack of trust and lack of good contractors. It's a way for you to now publicize yourself and your brand and educate the public, which now allows people to say, okay, if I want to do a passive house or energy efficient house, I'm going to call Casey. Like, he gets it. And even if he's not an expert today, he's going that direction. And that's who I want to partner myself with. And people see that. They see the growth, they see where you're going, and they want to ride that train.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I learned by doing these interviews. I'm learning from you, right? So like, I'm making notes to get my brother to come listen, because he's the one who helps with the systems and processes, right? So
Yeah.
listen to Brad. He's got an idea for us. We got to implement this.
Yeah. But it makes a difference. It's funny. Like, I never thought that. I mean, that's one of the benefits of getting out there and communicating on social media. I mean, it builds friendships such as this. So I built friendships with amazing people. So even outside of the marketing, yes, you can have a marketing footprint where you're dictating your work and you're having plenty of lead generation. But also, it's allowed me where now I have contractors I network with, and I understand the issues they've had and the legal problems they've had. Or they may have sent me, Brad, here's how I bid a job. Here's the percentage I charge on a cost plus. Here's my fee. And so what's happened is it's better education, because now I have more information that I would not have otherwise had, had I not been on social media making these connections.
Right. Are you a part of any like mastermind groups or anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah. Which ones are you involved with?
So I am in it. So Builder 20 is probably my main one. So again, the social media connection, one of the original. So the Builder 20, which a lot of people are familiar with, at least in the US through NHB, which is the National Association of Home Builders. It's a group of 20 builders that don't compete, different markets of the country. They get together twice a year. They share financials, they share profit, they share expenditures, so and they share like documentation, SOP, schedule procedures, everything they do to better their business. So when this group started, the original group started in 1994. And the gentleman who started this, he's from Ohio. His son followed me on social media and he's like, "Hey, Dad, there's this builder in Arizona. I think we should invite him to the group," because he only had 19 at the time. And so I was fortunate to be invited and be accepted in this group. And it's a great group of mastermind. They brought me in because I have the marketing, the social media. So I've educated them on that. And then most of them, they're at a point in their career where their children are starting to take over the company. So they're well versed, 50s and 60s, been doing this for 30, 40 years. And they've shared incredible information with me just on things to better our business. And so for anyone listening, you can go to the builder shows. We'll see what happens with COVID, but you can go to, and sign up in these groups, and they're great mastermind groups. And then there's some other professional ones I'm in here locally, because I think it's really important too. Part of marketing is you need to build within your network, which is what we're talking about, in the contractor network. But you need to also be in mastermind groups outside your network. You need to be networking with dentists or CEOs, or startup businesses, because there's other mentality. And this goes back to the processes. If you understand what makes certain companies great, it's their culture and it's their processes. And how can you apply similar things that they're doing in their corporate environment to your small company? And by doing that, that's going to help you be better as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so great. So one last thing actually on the COVID thing, you mentioned that you typically do meetings with your team and the culture. Like, is that something that's been affected with the current situation, or have you been able to continue that somehow?
That's a great question. So we've been able to keep it. I mean, Arizona, despite what the news will tell you, hasn't been as bad as what the media will say. But the reality is we're fortunate to have a big office where we can, keep our space. So everyone's construction was deemed essential for us. So we've been working every day since March. Knock on wood, we have no issues of COVID in our company or in the field. Everyone's, been good about that. So we've been able to meet and work every day and socially distance and still have no issue to keep the camaraderie and keep the communication going. And we did have a couple where we did Zoom calls, but the only reason we did like a team Zoom was because it was at a point in the schedule where everyone's really busy and they were, our projects can be 35 miles apart. So with everyone scattered, it was just more efficient to handle it via Zoom, but it wasn't because of COVID.
Right. Well, that's good. Hopefully that keeps going for you and
Yeah.
everyone stays healthy. So I definitely recommend that everyone check out your podcast, AFT Construction. Was there anything else that you want to share? Any asks or any other links you want to send people to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Casey. I mean, you can find us. If you look up AFT Construction on Instagram, it's AFT_construction, but pretty much all the social media platforms are AFT Construction. You can look up Brad Leavitt. Our website's aftconstruction.com. And again, go to the podcast and you can search Brad Leavitt, the AFT Construction Podcast, and you can hear Casey on there, who gave us a lot of good information. And yeah, we're easy to find. We're around, and definitely stay tuned because we got a couple projects that'll blow your mind. We have two actually breaking ground next month in October that are going to be one of a kind, probably two with very unique elements you've never seen. So we're excited about those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Keep me posted on that. Maybe we'll have some footage of that shared for you.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Brad, thanks so much for being on the show. This has been another great conversation. I've learned lots. I have notes over here that I need to take action on now. So appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for having me, Casey.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Conscious Builder Show. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe so you can stay up to date on all these great interviews, as well as stay up to date on all the exciting projects we have coming, including our first official YouTube series, The 3-Day Cottage, which we have some teaser videos out for. So thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next episode.